Hello, I'm Andrew Hara, the host of the Mom Squad. I wanted to tell you about my movies. All are available on Tubi, which is a free streaming service. The last one is a zombie drama about how a pandemic and isolation could drive a group of people mad. When the virus hits, John finds himself alone and scared until he meets Michael, his protector. But when Karina, another survivor, enters the mix, everything that John and Michael knew will be turned on its head. The last one is a zombie virus movie that's somehow even more relevant today. Plus, it has zombies. Check it out. Borderland is a mexploitation film about living in El Paso. When Sarah finds herself in debt to the cartels, she has until sunrise to find some missing monies with the help of her executioner. Borderland is a true midnight movie and a lot of fun. Finally, the documentary Humble Spirits tells the story of the Hahn family, including champion Jennifer Hahn from El Paso, Texas. The entire Hahn family has grown up in the combat sports and has helped shape who they are both in and out of the ring. Humble Spirits, a family of fighters, is the perfect documentary for boxing fans of all ages. Check out Tubi to watch all my films. Finally, The Empty Space, winner of multiple awards, including the Sacramento Horror Film Festival's Best of the Fest, is a cosmic horror about Amy Andrews, who's dealing with anxiety and depression after a violent attack that killed her husband. As she tries to find herself, she starts to lose her grasp on reality. Or could it be something much more sinister? The Empty Space is full of twists and turns, with Grace DeWilder of Rue Morgue magazine calling it a powerful film full of excellent performances by practically every cast member. All of Andrew Hada's movies are available to rent or buy on streaming services such as Tubi, Amazon, and many other places. We hope that you help support us by watching these films. Now, let's start the Bomb Squad. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Xenomonth as we talk over the Alien franchise.
Hey, Xenomonth is cool.
Xenomonth. We thought of that last time. Apparently, William did not remember.
No, well, my tastes always are consistent. I like things every time I hear them.
And today we've covered the good one. We've covered Alien Resurrection. And now we go back in time to talk about a movie that's certainly not Alien 5. 2012's Prometheus, starring Ridley Scott, written by Dan O'Brien. Well, Dan O'Brien just created the character of Ripley. He didn't really write this movie. He hadn't been involved since Alien 3. Written by John Sprates. And of course, everyone's favorite mystery box writer, Damon Lindelof. When has he ever met a franchise he couldn't make dumber? No, it stars Numi Rapace, Logan Marshall Green, or as you thought of him, hey, is that Tom Hardy? Oh, it's not.
Yeah.
Michael Fassbender.
So
he is a good actor. I feel
He's
bad
like-
that he looks so much like Tom Hardy because he's a good
I know.
actor.
He's like the Millhouse Tom Hardy, where he's a little scrawnier, nerdier, but
Yeah.
he's
A
close.
little angrier.
It also stars Michael Fassbender, who, if you've seen Shane, he's not bending anything. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, he's not bending over in this movie.
Yeah. It also stars Charlize Theron and Idris Elba and Guy Pearce. Like, you're like, hey, all these
Yeah.
actors, they definitely have meaty roles to chew on, right?
Their motivations are going to make sense the whole time, right?
Especially going from scene to scene.
Yeah.
Josh,
Also,
why don't
the guy
you...
who looks like T.J. Miller, but isn't T.J. Miller?
Yeah, who also looks... This movie has a lot of, hey, that's this guy. No, it's
It's
not.
like Wong, isn't it, from the Marvel movies? And you're like, oh, Wong, he gets 3 lines. Cool.
I want to say that it
Yeah.
also has... it has... doesn't it have the bad guy from Mission Impossible?
Yeah, he's the Mohawk geologist.
Sean Harris. Yeah, he's...
Yeah.
He loves
My
Fox.
favorite thing about him is in the first Mission Impossible he's featured. He's just like an evil like business guy, and then the next time we see him, he looks like he should be on the Con Air to fight Nicolas
yeah.
Cage because he has like a
He's
huge
like a
beard.
super terrorist.
And,
yeah.
and now he talks like this, where he's like, every move you make, Ethan, is a move in a chess match of death, and it's like, Weren't you like trying to make processors last time? What the hell happened?
Things
But anyway,
change, man.
enough. It's not Mission Impossible month. It's not
Yes,
Month
Xenomonth.
Impossible.
Yeah.
It's Xenomonth. So Josh, why don't you break down this prequel that's not Alien 5? Make sure you add that at the beginning.
It's definitely the fifth Alien film, or Alien 5 as some colloquially call it.
Yeah.
We don't count AVP. Those are garbage. Okay, so these scientists are on a research mission, and they're coming to this planet because these ruins correspond to ruins they found on Earth, and they're like, "Is the secret of life here?" I don't know.
I mean, it's a cool question. Cool question
And
to explore.
the main scientist, Elizabeth Shaw, is very religious. Everyone else is just kind of in it for either money or just scientific curiosity. So, you got a real clash of motivations.
If you could keep giving us details so that we have nothing to talk about.
What does the poster look like? Like, you should describe that.
Yeah. You're like, and then at the end, here's what happened.
Well, to be fair, it does open with literally an engineer or architect, whatever, like on Earth killing himself, and then so you're kind of like, okay, there's gonna be some God stuff in this.
I mean, honestly, great scene. I love that opening scene.
Yeah, I'm a big fan.
I was also like, hey, Josh, stop spoiling the movie so we can get into the discussion. He was like, hold on, let me give another spoiler.
Well, that's literally the first scene in the movie.
Hold on.
Spoiler.
I have more spoilers to give. Well, okay. So before we talk about the movie, let's take a second. So this is like a lot of things had changed since Alien Resurrection. There was a point where James Cameron and Ridley Scott were going to work together, although we'll get into that a little later. And then Alien versus Predator, the first one was a huge hit. The second one was a huge bomb. So they're like, what are we going to do with this franchise? So then they brought back Ridley Scott. This is the first time that a director has come back to the Alien franchise. Usually they just get one.
That's true.
And so it marks a very...
What's the time gap between AVP2 and Prometheus?
AVP2, I think it was 2009, but I could check real fast.
Okay. Yeah, it was a few years. It wasn't
2007, so it's a little bit of a race.
It's about the same as AVP 1 to AVP 2 back to Resurrections. We're kind of on a similar timeline that we've always been on.
Yeah, and there's always one of the cool things about the Alien franchise is they take a long time between movies. I mean, even Alien Covenant and this one that's coming out this year, it's been quite a while. So of course, bringing back Ridley Scott marked a big shift. This movie isn't super well received, but we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But yeah. And then, we'll talk more about where the franchise should have been headed or, what the plan was in Alien Covenant, because that's, the last one. But for this one, there was a very big excitement. Even the trailer, kind of mind.
The hype was real.
Yeah. I think me and William were, super hyped. We were psyched. This was our #1 movie of the year, I think.
Yeah.
So it starts off, and, the whole thing, especially the beginning, so it starts out like Josh was saying, and there's this alien. He's 10 feet tall, and he looks like a boring man. And he drinks. He looks like a boring man.
He's just because he's bald. I don't understand.
He has no distinguishing features.
He's kind of he's kind of a Slender Man type, where he's just kind of
He's not a script yet.
A boring man. What a weird way to put it.
He's a very tall, boring man. And so he drinks this contraption, and then he's like, oh, and then he disintegrates into the water, and then that creates man.
You see his DNA creating blood cells and stuff. Yeah.
And then
he disintegrates into black, so it looks like the alien color.
Yeah.
The xenomorph color.
Yeah, because
something I don't know.
There's goo in this movie that's gonna look like it's come from the alien. It almost looks like there's saliva. That's not what it is, but it is trying to make that connection.
Yeah.
And then we start this movie, and then it cuts to Earth. This is again the second time we've seen Earth, but in the entire franchise in this movie, Earth.
2089. So
2089. So
60 years from now.
So Joe Biden's running for re-election again. I do like.
He's doing stasis for the Wayland Corporation.
They're just
It's
propping
actually
him up
so
like
funny.
Weekend at Bernie's. Yeah.
Does it
Yeah.
ever bother you guys when it's like, oh, it's 50 years in the future and everyone's just wearing like modern coats and stuff? I don't mind it too much, but I do notice it. I'm
But
always like, shouldn't it be
see-
a little different? You know?
We've been wearing coats for a long time.
Yeah.
I bet in 2089 we're gonna be wearing coats still.
Yeah, I'm under the
No,
assumption
but,
it's
like,
still going to be cold.
Those type of like the style of current mountain climber coats is very like of the time of
I mean,
modernity. You know,
We still wear like jean jackets, and that's the style of like 200 years ago from
maybe
when Mexicans
you
created
still
cowboys.
wear jean jackets.
Well, cool
Jean
people.
jackets are cool. I wear jean
You,
jackets.
Damn.
you
I
wouldn't
think
caught
it's-
I wouldn't be
Damn.
caught
Interesting
dead in a
sci-fi.
denim jacket. All right.
Well,
Yeah,
they'll
well,
probably freeze to death.
I mean, we're looking at your style right now, so it's not like
yeah, what the hell?
You're-
Fucking semi golf polo thing.
he's wearing a golf polo. He's like, "Hey." Anyway,
What's jean jackets are fucking.
see, that doesn't bother me as much as the fact that these ships in this movie, because it's supposed to be like 200 years before the first Alien, look like the same ships. Now,
Yeah.
clothing hasn't changed, but like even like a car from the 50s to a car now
Right.
would look almost completely different. I understand, I don't understand why they did it, but they do it. But we're
They
still
kinda,
on
I
Earth.
mean, they also kind of do because like the franchise spans from like 500 years, and the ships always look like that. So it's kind of like
Yeah.
I accept
Kind of
that
like
a little
goth
more.
monstrosities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're
I'll
on
back it
Earth,
up.
and they find like a mural, and they're like, okay, here's a bunch of murals, and then it just cuts to them in space, and they're all waking up.
And it's
And
4
then-
years later.
It's 4 years later, and they've gotten to their location, and they're like, everyone. Oh, and then we cut to David. So we're introduced to David, played by Michael Fassbender, and he's the first android, which again looks like Bishop, who's like, I guess they only made him uglier in 200 years for some reason.
Yeah, I know. I guess people are like just like too much like conjugal
He's-
shit was happening.
Everyone, yeah,
People loved the robots. They're like, oh damn.
everyone
That
kept
basketball
kissing
again.
him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
stop making them so sexy.
Yeah.
I totally forget because it's kind of his day to day as he like practices human stuff, but he's like
Mhm.
obsessed with the movie Lawrence of Arabia. You know, like his
Yeah.
hair is the Lawrence of Arabia hair. He like dyes it
Yeah.
to be
Yeah,
specifically that.
And he also gives himself a British accent for no real reason, just because Lawrence of Arabia has one.
Which, to be fair, Idris Elba gives himself the worst Texas accent for no reason. It's like he shouldn't
He's
have
like
done
Texas British.
Yeah.
Honestly though, Idris is untouchable, so shut your fucking mouth.
that. Oh, I love
Yeah.
him in this movie,
Yeah,
but
He's really collecting that paycheck in this film.
he loses his accent every 2 words in this movie.
Yeah, I didn't even know that he had. I thought he
There's
had
like-
a British accent when I was watching it.
So,
I didn't
Everyone
know.
wakes up. Well, we see David, and we see him copying, and he's like trying to be a real boy.
Oh, and we
He shoots
see
the-
him.
He did the basketball shot, like in Resurrection. Just
Yeah,
let go of that one.
he's on a bike doing basketball, much like Ripley was excellent. And he very brief Patrick Wilson scene where he's like
Oh yeah,
watching,
Patrick Wilson
Cameo.
plays the mom,
or the dad, but yeah.
the dad. The mom's
You know,
dead.
who knows? We don't know what he was. We
Yeah,
don't know what he
because
was
there's like,
before,
well, and that seems so weird because it's like she's like, "Hey, Dad, do things die?" And he's like, "Yeah, you're like 6 years old. You should kind of like already know that."
Yeah.
And she's like, "Hey, Dad, what if things don't die?" And the dad's like, "Jesus Christ."
I'm trying to make us some fucking sandwiches.
I'm a doctor right now. How do you not know things die? We're in like the middle of an African village. It's not going great here.
And then she's like mom died, and he's like, yes, bitch, like fucking mom died.
Stop
Why
bringing
you
that
bringing
up.
that up?
Every day.
Hard enough.
It should be like they should have cut to more, and he's like cooking dinner, and she's like, "Wow, you never used to cook dinner when mom was alive." Just everything that they talk about, the daughter brings it back to
I
the
know.
dead mom.
He just like throws his head in the soup, and then it's like,
Yeah.
my dad died today.
And then they wake up, and one of the weirdest, like, so it cuts to everyone is kind of like groggy. They're doing like that. Oh, I'm tired, and then it cuts to Idris Elba, and he's making a Christmas tree, and he's like singing a song.
Oh yeah, it's 4 days till Christmas.
It's 4 days till
Right.
Christmas, and it's such a like. this was improv, and I don't know what you wanted us to take from this. Like,
It never came back up, did it? It was never.
it
Christmas
doesn't come
again.
back up.
They're
It's not like characteristic of his character. His character is completely different every single time we see him
I
as to
know.
what his goals are.
He's
what I
just
what I
not-
love too, and I don't
not
want to
hanging
like
out.
not to get into spoilers, but at the very end of the movie, he's the one who has somehow figured it all out and like gives the exposition to everyone, and it's like
Oh,
you were on the
yeah.
ship the whole time. How did you piece this together?
He's like, I had a lot of fucking time, man. I was making Christmas trees.
It's like you're not even one of the scientists. You're just the pilot who like chomps a cigar. I'm very confused.
And listen, this is not the pick on Josh hour, but not to get into spoilers, at the very end of the movie is not a sentence. It's not; those words should not be next to each other.
Not to get into spoilers. Oh,
Not to
yeah.
get into spoilers, but at the very end, here's what happens.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to tell you what the exposition is. It's just that it's like it's weird that he's the one giving it. I was like, I guess he
No,
might
that
as
is
well
very
be,
funny.
but yeah,
It
Josh,
is like
you're our Idris Elba. in this
yeah,
podcast.
you're just
I'm
a
the
wild card.
the most handsome one. That's
Yes.
what you're saying.
Michael Fassbender's
comes
there, and once
Yeah.
Idris has his own shame, then we can go toe to toe. Also, there's a movie called Shame. I don't like it.
Yeah.
It's a real sex.
I don't know
Not
whether he actually
referencing.
has shame or not. Yeah.
Although I will say the terrible haircut brings Fassbender down a bit in this one. He does
That is
look
a bad
ridiculous, but I like it. It
So
works.
everyone's waking up, and then there's an amazing scene where, like, then Guy Pearce comes out, and he's a million-year-old Wayland Yutani. Or not Wayland Yutani, but he's Wayland.
He's just Wayland.
He's
Yeah.
Wayland Smithers.
It does
from-
look really
yeah.
bad. The makeup and
It's not that it looks bad, it's that we know what that guy looks like. So, like, they're trying to make him look so old. He does look like Mr. Burns, which is a problem.
Yeah, he looks like he's melting.
and
Yeah.
I do wonder, are the deleted scenes like, do they exist out there?
And then he stands like this.
because
Are there deleted scenes?
they must
Yeah.
have filmed scenes where he's younger. Because I know
That's what I thought too, but there are no scenes where he's filmed younger until Alien Covenant. The
Oh,
only thing
dear.
that they shot was that one, like Wayland. So before this movie came out, the hype was so big that they literally like released a Wayland like tech TED talk, and people like ate it up.
Yeah.
oh, that's so
And
weird.
that's the only time before Alien Covenant. That's the only time you see Guy Pearce as his normal self.
He-
Like you think that maybe because like a lot of this is we'll get into it in a little bit, but a lot of it is time related. Then maybe there was going to be something going on where he'd age down quickly. But no,
Yeah.
there's no reason for him not to be like a super old dude.
Yeah.
And, yeah,
So-
and he
He's
and
got
he is
an old
in
guy.
what 3 minutes of Covenant. Like it's not a big like it's
No,
one
yeah.
scene. You know, it's
Yeah, it's not like a remix or anything. And so like they're all together, and he has this thing, and he's like, "Hey guys, the reason I brought you here is that we hired these two scientists right here, Shaw and her boyfriend, and they think that they found they think that they found God in space. So that's what we're here for." And like, did nobody ask before they left? Like,
Yeah.
imagine.
I fucking know. And those guys are such assholes. They're like, oh, you guys think there's robots in space? It's like, you signed up for this, you fucking asshole.
I know. And then
Why are
there,
you being a dick?
there's like that part where, like, imagine you took a job working with a bunch of scientists, and you're a scientist. Then you get to the job, and they're like, "By the way, we're gonna go find God."
And you're just like, oh, come
Okay.
on.
What the
That's
hell?
fucking lame.
Yeah.
That'd be fucking badass.
Like, I just like I can't stop thinking, especially at the beginning. I can't stop thinking of like a Fox executive sitting in like a meeting, listening to Damon Lindelof and Ridley Scott like tell them this story where it's like, oh yeah, so actually the alien guys made all of us, and there's like no God, and so like then they're gonna go find him because they think he's God, and it's like, get out of my office, like right now. Like, what are you talking about? Like, is this about the guys who have two mouths? So then they get down to the planet, and they're going to so they're gonna go check it out, and then they're mapping it out. They're bringing like the whole entire team. They've never heard of what a scout is before. So they get down there, and like it's
Yeah.
kind of weird. It's such a weird like, and I hate to compare this to Alien, but it's so much of this is just what happens in Alien. And like in Alien, it makes sense for them to be as like to not know as much as they do because they're answering a distress call like they don't even know who sent it.
Yeah,
In this one,
they're perplexed.
yeah. In this one,
Right.
they should have
They're not
more of an
looking for
idea, but
anything.
they all kind of walk around like they're chickens with their heads cut off. And like Shaw and her
Yeah.
boyfriend don't even lead the team. Like it's David, and it's like, why is it David if you hired these two people to be like the geniuses on this trip? You know? Yeah.
Right.
And
Well,
then
that's
they,
They
yeah.
start their job.
No, it's just
Smart
like
science.
it is. It's very. Everyone reacts a lot less professional than like the random like kind of truckers in the first movie because that's basically what they are, right? Just cargo like lifters. And this one, they're like, "What's going on?"
Yeah,
And it's like,
yeah.
you're scientists.
they get out there and they find like an engineer who's been dead for like 2,000 years.
Yeah.
And the biologist and like the archaeologist immediately freak out and want to leave, and it's like, but your whole like these are the two guys who shouldn't want to leave. They're like the ones who need to know about it the most.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, and they were the ones that were like the fucking assholes at first too. And then like, I hate that part whenever he's like, "I don't have anything to do with the dead fucking bodies," and it's like he has like this whole moment, but it's like this is like the dumbest moment that you've like
And
used. This
not only that, but
performance
it's like,
for, and, it
you're a
doesn't earn it,
scientist.
at
You
all.
have like the
So
most
dumb.
to do with these dead. Like, what did you think they were coming out here to? Well, to be fair, apparently they weren't.
No
told
one
what the mission
knew,
was.
but they almost kind of lampshade it because
I
later
know.
those two, when they run off, you find out that the geologist has like packed his like weed vape into his spacesuit, and it's like,
Yeah.
this is a very like Camp Crystal Lake like dumb
Yeah.
counselors
Yeah.
moment, and it's almost like you're drawing attention to it. But why did you make your
Yeah.
scientist
And-
this?
And
you
then
know?
there's like so there's this scene before they go out where where Shaw's boyfriend is like looking at David and he's like, "Why are you wearing that helmet?" And David's like, "It's to make you guys feel more comfortable." But it's like in this world, like again, in Aliens, Ripley is scared of Bishop because of what Ash did. And like then like even in Alien Resurrection they make a point that like there was a bunch of aliens or androids who revolted, and so they've made them illegal. But in this one, this would be like if someone like you're hanging out with your friends and that first guy has like an iPhone, you'd be like, "What the hell is this? Let me see it." Like let me. But everyone's, especially the boyfriend's so hostile to David that it's like, but why? Like we don't ever get a reason why.
I know.
And that boyfriend character is going to be a thorn in my side this entire conversation. He is the most like miswritten character I've probably ever seen in a movie. Yeah, and he's so unlikable. Even Shaw's a little bit unlikable, but this dude is so like he's antagonizing David, and like we'll learn later that David's kind of like got his own agenda, but he's antagonizing David for seemingly no reason.
Yeah,
and he just comes off as the hugest jerk in the world.
And Shaw is unlikable because she's like singular minded, and I can because it's like a religious mission for her, and it's like I get that, and it like makes sense. For him, he's just kind of a contrarian with whoever he's talking to, because like once they find the engineers, he's like, "Hey, Shaw, I guess you're gonna throw away your crucifix that looks like necklace now, right? Because God's not real." She's like, "What?
Yeah.
Like, why are you a Reddit atheist?"
It doesn't even make sense because like the idea is that they get out there, they're trying to find their makers, and then they find these guys, and like they haven't even confirmed that there are makers yet. They just so far they followed like a symbol to a random planet, and that's all they know. But for some reason the boyfriend's like, "Oh well, that's God and he died and it's not even worth it." And it's like, where have you gotten to this? Like, I know you thought you were looking for God, but just because you go there, that doesn't mean the first person you run into is God. This isn't Life of Brian. What the hell's... Yeah.
Yeah, you don't know the rules. You don't know anything about these people. They're just
what if those guys are like the worker bees or something? Like, who knows, you know?
Right, and this is actually kind of because in even in the original Alien, obviously they're reacting pretty horrified to what they find on that like random planet, because you would, but not in a way like, oh, this is the first time we've ever encountered any kind of like non-human thing. it almost kind of implies that there's other, like they've probably found like animals on different planets is kind of the implication. Even in this one later when they find the eggs, they're like, oh, it's a little creature, and they're not freaking out about that. They're just like, oh, how strange, a little creature. So it's like, okay, they probably found some, like, you know, space dogs on a space planet. So it's almost weird that he jumps to that with everything else we know about Alien in that movie and in this movie. You know what I mean? Like it's a weird way to be.
And
Totally.
I like, so then
It's a
they're
weird way
there,
to
and
be, I
like
agree.
once they see like a hologram of like a bunch of engineers running, and one of them gets their head cut off. So they find the head, and they're like, "Let's get it out of here." And then David finds, like, they're not eggs, but they look like kind of proto eggs, and he's like freezing. There's a lot of plot, so it's just gonna have to cover a lot. So he's like freezing it to take it, and he seems to know what it is, but then we'll talk about it in a second. And then like the two pothead guys, the two teen scientists have already left, and they're lost. And like again, the whole mountain or whatever they're in has been mapped, at least where they're from,
by the geologist, by the guy who's in the
But not only that, but Idris Elba can see where everyone is from the ship, but at no point does he call them. So then they're like, "Oh, there's a storm coming. Let's go." And again, no one's like, "Hey, should we make sure the biologists and the geologists have gotten on board because we don't have unlimited oxygen?" Oh, at this point, okay. And then they're like, "Nah, we'll just go." One thing I'll say is that they take off their helmets. Is this where they take off their helmets, or when they come back?
I think it's even before they find the engineer.
It's like
they take off the helmets.
So they take off their helmet. I'm gonna say, like, I will. I'm not gonna. I don't care. Like, I'm gonna assume that spaceship probably had something that told them how many microbes are in the air. It's fine. I don't really give a shit.
That's one of those things where it's like I don't want to be too pedantic, and I totally get why they do that.
And it's one of those things where they're like, I mean, it's not as big a deal as people made it out to be, you know. But I will say that this is the beginning of like, so Red Letter Media did that famous like talks about Prometheus thing, and one of the it's just them like pointing out plot holes, but one of the things they say is David a secret asshole? And that just kind of explains David's character.
That's literally his entire motivation.
Whatever anyone is doing, David is trying to ruin that plan for really no reason. Sometimes he just likes to fuck with people.
And you think at first you're like, oh, he's doing it because he has like a mission from Wayland.
Yeah.
But then it turns out no, he's just doing it behind Wayland's back too. I actually wonder about this because do you think Ridley Scott disliked the way they went with Bishop and Call in Aliens and Resurrection, where he's like, oh, you shouldn't have good androids. Like everything should be oppressive. So even he should be evil, you know? So
that's going to come into the theory that I have that I'll talk about at the end. Okay. But keep that in mind.
Okay.
And then also, we forgot to talk about this completely. Charlize Theron is also on board. She plays like the head of Wayland right now, who's taken over for Wayland since Wayland is dead.
Right.
It'll come back. So Wayland has died. Yeah. She's taken over. And she's in charge.
None of that matters.
And like, she's very like mad. It almost seems like she doesn't want to be there, but she's doing it to prove to Wayland that she could. But he's dead. Wink, wink. And it's like her character is so pointless in the entire movie. She's just there to kind of like be angry and kind of talk loud. And it's like, you have Charlize Theron like do something with her, make her Shaw. I don't know, but it's like so anyway, so then like there's that scene where David's gonna get the egg, or he gets into the egg room and he turns off his camera, and she's like, oh, you're hiding things from me too, huh, David? And it's like, who is David working for in this movie?
I know. I was so confused on that.
Yeah, and I like this movie, but man, it's got a lot of fucking holes.
Yeah, you don't really. I mean, so much of like the twist with Wayland's family connections do not. Yeah. And it's just if it wasn't there, it wouldn't change the movie like at all. So it's kind of like, I don't know. Yeah. Like,
then they get back and they have the head. And then for some reason she drops the head because she wasn't holding on to it, and it flies because there's a storm has hit. And then she runs after it, and then she flies away. and then they take a ship to go get him, and it's like
They have the little
why?
the space
We didn't-
4-wheeler.
We
I
didn't
like
need
that.
this alien. We didn't need this little action scene. What the
I
hell?
know. I know. It was funny because like whenever I was watching it, Leslie like was asking me a question during it, and I was like, "Hold on, this scene is exciting." And then the scene came out, I was like,
Was
"Wait,
it
was that
the,
exciting? Like,
that was
did that
like
require me to be
that
like?"
was like Ridley Scott should have said. They're like, "Hey, we built your space like 4-wheeler." He's like, "What? I guess I'll use it now. I didn't know we had that."
Yeah, and it comes into play multiple
Yeah.
times in this movie. So then they get this head and they take off the helmet. Remember that cool alien at the beginning of Alien? And he had like kind of an elephant head and he had a chest bursted out of him and he kind of had skin like the alien. Well, imagine if instead of him looking like that, he looked like a boring dude.
A boring man, a
boring
nondescript man.
A boring man.
So there's like that. There's that. I'll try to find it, but there's that meme where it's like from 1977, and it's H.R. Geiger like making the face of that creature, and then like there's like a little caption and it says, "And under this helmet's a very boring face."
That's good.
But so then they take it off, and this creature has been dead for 2,000 years. Its head looks almost completely intact. There's been no skin, like you could still see its face and its eyeballs.
It was preserved in
It
its
was
helmet.
preserved perfectly. Well, in its helmet or maybe something else.
Yeah.
And it also has these deformities on its head. So I know what you're thinking. Being a room full of non-scientists, you're like, well, we obviously wouldn't shoot it with electricity. Well, guess what? You're not scientists. Because the first thing they do instead of like taking samples or like trying not to destroy it is they shoot that thing with electricity to try to convince it that it's alive. I guess.
Yeah.
And by the way, they don't know, like they're kind of aware of what language it speaks, but they're not 100% aware. Or if they're even pronouncing the words right.
Yeah.
But their goal is to wake this thing up from fake dead and try to talk to it. It is a cool scene.
Very cool
and it's like
scene,
this,
but just fucking nonsense.
And so then it like starts to malfunction, of course. And so they're like, put it away, and so they put it away, and then it explodes. And again, nothing else in this movie that's infected with that goo explodes. This doesn't happen. It doesn't really even come up. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things with this movie is that, like, and we talked a little bit about the production, but like this was originally written as a direct sequel to Alien. Then, like, Ridley Scott didn't want it to be a complete direct sequel.
Oh.
So they kind of like thought of this thing with exploring the engineers a little bit more. And then they gave it to Dave Lindelof, who, if you don't know, he did like Watchmen, but he's most famous for Lost and kind of adding that. And Ridley Scott was specifically like, I want you to make this more like mysterious. And so then David Lindelof kind of like reworked the script to fit like his way of writing. And I like this movie, don't get me wrong. But there's multiple scenes. Almost the whole movie feels like it's been taken from one unused script. And then the next scene is just featuring the same characters, but it's been taken from another unused script.
Yeah.
Because, there's like scenes in
100%.
here that like are life-changing things that everyone should be aware of. And like, not only does nobody talk about it, but even the person it's happening to, like someone gets major surgery later. it barely comes up at all.
Not a factor.
And this is the same thing. Like, not only do they don't even say like, "Hey, it was kind of stupid for you to blow up that face. Like, we probably should have done more with it." Like, everyone's just like, "Damn, can't believe that head blew up."
Yeah, get some sample. Honestly, the only person who's reacting correctly there is the asshole boyfriend, because he's like, "Damn, this is way fucked up, and I hate it." But they don't ever go into like why he's just all of a sudden drinking alone while they're trying to like electronify his head. He's just all of a sudden pissed off to the side, and you're just like, "Yeah, he's just a fucking like narcissist."
He's mad that he was passed up for Bane. Tom Hardy got the role instead.
He's hereditary levels of gaslighting his girlfriend, because did he even ever believe? Because the way they present at the beginning is that these two are the believers who have spent their entire lives trying to prove God, He gets up
Mhm.
there, he sees one disciple, and he's ready to throw it all away. What are you like? What's going on here? And
Right? Are
he's
you not even
yeah.
curious about like who these people are? Like, yeah, it wasn't what
Yeah.
you
And
imagined, but it's a new
the
discovery. Like,
wife
you're a
or the
scientist.
girlfriend is like, oh well, this is good. Like we discovered new life form, and he's like, who cares? And it's like, who cares? These guys are so smart that they've like this guy's been alive
Everyone.
for 2,000 years, and his space helmet kept him preserved. That's pretty impressive. Like,
Yeah, if
Right.
anything, like you could like even if you didn't believe in God, like let's take the God stuff out of it.
yeah,
This would be like, oh, this could like change humanity because of like whatever
yeah.
genetic like stuff we're gonna learn here, and like
Like, let's say
yeah,
I went up, I
Yeah.
go up to
yeah,
space, and
All
I'm
the
like, I'm gonna go
implications.
find God, and instead I find like a lightsaber. I'm gonna be pretty fucking excited, even if I didn't find God. Like, that's
yeah.
a pretty cool thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Not
then,
bad.
like, and then it's one of my favorite scenes because it's probably the worst written scene in the entire movie. So they're in the bedroom and they're talking, and he's like kind of trying to explain why, because that's the scene that we were talking about earlier, where he's like, "Why are you gonna throw your crucifix away?" And she's like, "Oh, but I want to know who made them. Like, this
Mhm.
doesn't mean I stop believing in God." And he's like, "Okay, but I don't care." And then he's like, "Well, they're just like us because they create like." Oh, he goes, "Okay, but we just found out that creating life isn't that big a deal. You just need some DNA and voila." But it's like at this point in the timeline of aliens, and even in Alien Resurrection, blah blah, you guys still hadn't figured out how to create human life. So even though these guys have figured out some kind of goo to
Yeah.
do it, again, that's still very, very
Yeah,
impressive.
it's
A major
monumentous, and like
discovery.
it would
And
change
Right.
every religion. Still, you
and like
know.
that part's okay. Like it's kind of dumb. But then
Yeah.
he says that he goes, well, they anything who creates life is good. And then she goes, I can't. What about me? I can't create life because I had
What
a
about me?
deformity. And he's like, okay.
That is
He's like, why
that's
does it always
such
got to
Make it
come
a
back to
different, you
this?
dummy.
that's such a like because they did
It's
that
always
in
about
one of the
you,
Avengers where
newbie.
the Black Widow's like, I'm a monster because I'm infertile. It's like I don't think most women think this way.
Yeah, I
This
don't
is
think
a
most
weird
people think that. Yeah,
that's
not
a
just
weird
women.
thing
Right.
to put in your
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah. And so then, while
Mhm.
this is all happening, oh, and then they have sex.
Which is important actually.
Yeah.
Oh, we didn't even cover
She loves
David.
his like.
Yeah,
She
we forgot.
She always like loves him
Yes.
when he's being an asshole and is like, I
So
love
we
you.
forgot to cover this. While this is happening, first David runs into Charlie Theron, and she's like, "What did he say?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't." And he throws her against the wall, or she throws him against the wall, and she's like, "I said, what did he say?" So it's like, okay, well, Waylon's alive. This is gonna be weird. Like, why are they keeping him alive? Is it gonna be
and
come up
also
later?
if he had been alive the whole
Yeah.
time, the movie would
Mm.
again been the same. I don't.
Yeah.
There's
Well,
no.
we'll talk about it a little bit, but then
Right.
so then David goes into his room and he takes out the egg, and he like gets the goo and he's like looking at it and it's like real small, and he's like, great things have small beginnings. When you watch this movie, it
Just out of
implies that
nowhere.
David knows what's happening. But by the end of this movie, you realize that David does not
Yes.
know anything about the goo or what it does, and like, there's no reason.
He's a curious boy. Well, no, because
I
then he
know.
takes some and just straight up injects it into that guy, right? Like
He puts it in his drink.
that's right.
He
He
Yeah,
does
puts
it
it in
like
his
this.
champagne. After he's like, what would you do to
Yeah.
learn all of the answers about the world? And he's like, I would do anything and everything. It's like, well, A, no, because you don't care about the answers
Yeah.
anymore because it didn't add up to your expectations, so you're mopey. But B,
I
it's like he just kind of
yeah.
jumps in.
In the most like common. Although
It's weird
can I
line.
just say I loved every David line is like a trailer line because whenever the engineer's head explodes, he's like
Yeah.
mortal
Like
after
Groot.
all.
Yeah, he does.
It's just
I'll tell you this: every
Yeah.
line that David says should include him like turning to the camera like Michael Jackson in Thriller and just like looking at it.
Yeah.
Like he should be Deadpooling it up in this movie. And so yeah, then he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna do this to you," and then it's also like, okay, but it doesn't matter. So then we cut to the geologist and the other guy, the biologist, and they're in there and they see like a snake thing, which I will say looks super cool.
Very phallic. Yes.
And now
Yeah,
that it's
yeah.
alive, they're not scared of it
Mhm.
anymore. So they like try to touch it and kiss it.
Yeah, it's very
But they
like, don't
have their
worry.
helmets on
Yeah.
still.
But again, like
Right.
even if it were just a random, like, like a wild dog instead of a bioweapon,
Yeah.
if you put your hand out to it, it might bite you. Like,
Right.
even then, it's not safe. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
It
like,
has a weird
okay,
little
yeah,
mouth.
this thing might
Like, I
react
don't want to get
badly to
close to
something
that.
trying to touch it.
And you'll never guess what happens. That's exactly what happens.
They
And
get
then like
owned.
it's a very cool scene, but again, like the thing wraps around his arm. And he's like, get it off. But then they're like trying to cut it, but at no point do they just grab it and try to pull it.
I think it's
Like, why
it's
not?
too strong. It's like a
Well,
snake.
Yeah.
That might be the case, but
They
you still
don't
need
try,
that
you're
scene
right.
where they try it, and then it like there's that scene in Alien where they nick it and then they find out it has acid for blood. Well, they don't do that in this one. They
Yeah.
attack that thing. They
Yeah,
attack that thing with a
inexplicably.
blade, and they're like, ah. And then it
Although-
shoots acid in his
Fuck this
face,
thing.
but it's not. It's like proto acid.
it
'Cause it doesn't
burns
melt.
less.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it melts it to his face.
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
he
it's not as
falls in the
strong.
goo, and then the goo like also goes into his face, and then the other guy just gets throat. He gets throat inserted by the alien.
Oh, it goes
Oh,
in.
yeah,
I actually do really
Yeah,
like
yeah,
because it's like the proto face hugger. It doesn't even know like quite how to do it yet. It's a cool idea that it's like figuring.
Yeah.
it out.
I do like the alien
Yeah.
designs in both this one and Covenant, which we'll talk about next time. But yeah, I think those are
Mhm.
good. I think like especially as like, oh, this looks like before, it works well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the designs are really cool, but yeah, they suffer 2 horrific deaths. Let's just say that.
Well, they're not even dead yet.
Yeah,
They're still around. And so then we cut back. Yeah. Then
Oh,
we cut
yeah.
back, and then the next day, the drunk boyfriend wakes up, and he's like, "Oh man, I'm so not horny anymore from having sex." And
Yeah.
That's what I say
and then
after I woke up. the next
he's
day.
like,
And that.
he's like looking at his face, and then like a tiny hair escapes his eyeball. And like, I know it's a movie, but I was like, how did he see that? It's so small. Like,
Yeah, when are you looking into your eye of glow?
Yeah.
See the
So
scientist.
it would have to be like swimming around in there. for a while.
maybe
Yeah.
he felt it in his eye, so he
Yeah.
was,
And okay,
That's true. Oh, isn't his eye like black?
not
or
yet.
something?
It
Like,
doesn't
does his
change
eye
color
change
till
color?
after that scene. Also, I do want to
Oh.
say, so like before
Gotcha.
going back to the engineer or the biologist and the chemist guy, I just keep giving him different science titles. There's like a scene where they call
Fuck
Idris
yeah.
Elba, and he's like, "Sorry guys, you got to stay out there." And then they're like, "Well, what can we do? Can we come back?" And keep in mind, they just all sacrifice themselves to go get ahead. And they're like, "Nah, guys, we can't move our ship
Right.
or anything to get closer to you. Just sleep in that thing. I'm sure you have enough oxygen." And it's
It seems fine.
and that's what I'm
Alien
saying. Like, it
monstrosity
seems
seems
like
fine.
the captain wants, like, he seems like a little bit nefarious sometimes, but maybe he's just bad at his job. Like, why wouldn't you
Yeah.
want to save 2 guys
Yeah, he's just
stranded
give a fuck.
in a place where you know that something bad could happen because you've seen this like tape of people being murdered in mass, or like at least be like, hey guys, how about you stay in the
Yeah.
front room so that we've already explored that area and then tomorrow we'll know where to find you. But no, none of that.
It doesn't,
So-
yeah.
Right. Like, we're gonna go to the
Yeah.
egg room. This egg room looks cool.
And so then they get
It's
attacked.
cozier.
They say, what's hatching in here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what they say when they walk in.
Yeah.
So then Shaw
What's
wakes
cracking?
up and she's like, I feel fine. I'm not pregnant or anything. And
She's like, I'm
And-
not
oh,
good
and-
pregnant,
they're like, we're gonna go
No
back.
way.
We're gonna go back to the thing to go get those guys that we didn't give a shit about earlier. Let's all go. And then Charlie Stern's like, me too.
Yeah.
And so they all go. And then they get there and they can't find anything. But then like the boyfriend gets sick because he's slowly turning into some kind of weird zombie thing. Like again, there's like 3 different
Yeah.
humans get attacked and they turn into different alien type things, and none of it's really like similar or explained.
It's also this is also as funny because this is also when David's just like, oh, I'm just gonna head off on my own, guys. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I'm just.
And they're like,
Yeah.
cool, David, see you back at the ship.
I'm not doing it. Although I do like because he finds like this
Normal shit.
holographic like chamber room, and it's very like it almost plays like Star Trek type music. Like it's very
The music is very
anti-alien. And it's very like, for a moment,
Music
you're
is
like,
great,
oh, I
yeah.
see, like, he is excited about this discovery, you know, and it's kind of cool that it.
I'll say the cool thing about the
Yeah.
music is that Alien feels very hopeless and kind of desolate, and this music feels very hopeful. And like
Yeah.
it's trying to open the world, so
Mhm.
it doesn't sound like Alien, but it does sound like from the same world just earlier. That's one of the main things I like about this.
And but it also added hard cuts too
Yeah,
when he
I
like
would agree.
finds the engineer's body, because he's like, oh yeah, it's like this horrible thing, you know.
So he turns it on.
It's a
I
cool
also
scene.
like that he turns it on, and then like there's like it's like a huge hologram with maps, and it looks super cool. But I'm also like, but you're from the future,
Yeah.
shouldn't you have like be kind of what impresses you guys?
Haven't you
Because
seen this
New
shit
Life is kind of boring.
New Life,
But-
very
It's
nonchalant.
fucking bullshit.
But
Yeah.
one of those science fiction projects where it's just the map of the universe with like styrofoam balls around it is like blowing your mind.
Right.
Like I don't
Well,
understand.
to be fair, it is just David in that scene, and David is having the time of his life in
I
this
know
whole
David's having a
movie.
very
So
fun time.
it's really
Yeah.
his
And-
good day out.
Truly.
More
Yeah.
importantly, David finds the
Yeah.
alien guy, and he's like, "I'm asleep." And so then they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, we got to get him back. Let's go back." And then Charlize Theron comes out, and she has a flamethrower, and it's very reminiscent of the scene in the original Aliens where they're trying to bring John Hurden. And Ripley's like, "No, it breaks protocol. You can't do this." Blah blah. Except in Alien, it
Mhm.
makes a lot of sense how they do it, and in this movie, Charlize Theron is on the loading dock with a flamethrower. Like,
Yeah.
and
Just
the,
to have
the
the
weird thing
floor.
is, like in Alien, Ripley's like, "No, what we need to do is freeze him and then bring him inside, so that whatever that thing is doesn't affect the whole crew." And they're like, "No, we need to get him
Right.
into the lab so we can try to take it off, or so we could save him." In this movie, Charlize Theron like immediately is like, "Let's set this motherfucker on fire." And,
Yeah.
and everyone's like,
I
"Well,
don't
let's
get one,
freeze him
but-
or something," and she's like, "No," but it's also like, okay, but isn't Wayland the one with the ulterior motive? Shouldn't you want to
Yeah.
save it?
But
And then-
she kind of hates
Yeah,
Waylon
yeah.
though. You know?
Trust me.
But
this
at
is the
no
shit you
point
need
is
in-
David like, no, let's save him. Which is like, wouldn't David want that the most?
Yeah.
And so then,
Right.
and then the guy, like, he's a little sick, and she's like, and they're like, "No, we can't. We gotta save him." And then he's like, "Burn me," and then she burns him.
Yeah.
And I'll
just
tell you
do
one
it.
thing. One time I went to Albuquerque for vacation, and I got very sick. The first thing on my mind was not to burn me alive. It was probably to go to a doctor and
Right.
see what was up. I know it's like an alien disease,
Take the Pepto-
Yeah.
but like maybe try it out.
Yeah.
Like, why does that
Maybe-
have to be the first?
Maybe he feels
They have a whole medical thing in there that
They
can,
can
like,
literally do
medical
medical-
stuff.
they weren't gonna let that
Miracles,
guy
as we'll
use the
talk.
pod. Let's
Yeah.
be honest.
So then, like, they set him on fire. It's a very interesting scene. And then Shaw's like, "Oh, my stomach hurts." So then she realizes that there's
Right.
something inside of her growing. And David's like, yes, it'll come out of you soon. And it's like, there's no way you knew about this, David. Don't stop lying.
he's
I
like
know.
he's like, by the way, I've been watching your dreams, wink. It's
Yeah.
like, what? No.
All of David's, yeah. All of David's like, he's like Vin Diesel in the Fast and Furious, where anytime the plan chases, he's like, "I knew that was going to happen." It's like, no, you don't. You couldn't have
I
known
know.
this.
Yeah, it's like you're a fucking liar.
This has literally never happened before in the history of even the engineers didn't know it was going to happen. And so then Shaw's
Right.
just left to her own devices, even though David just made it very clear that they want the thing that's inside of her. And so then
Yeah.
she finds like a medical pod. And so like, which is, again, this is the scene. It's
This is a
probably
good
the
scene.
best scene in the
Yeah.
movie, but it also is
Yeah.
completely removed from the entire movie. Like you could take it out and nothing, like it doesn't affect the plot really in any way.
You know,
I know.
the
Yeah.
alien
feels like
comes
a
back
climax,
at the end,
for sure.
and it
Yeah.
looks cool.
But that's also like,
Yeah.
we'll get to it.
It doesn't matter, but you know.
So like it's kind of cool because she's like trying to like type in like she says first give her a cesarean, but it's like, oh, this is coded to a man. But it's like this big like kind of tube that's supposed to
Right.
they can do any surgery, and it's a little confusing because they make it seem like you can do it by yourself. But like this machine that can like literally cut you open and take out a tumor and zip you back up, it never thought that there might be a rush, and B, you might not know what's wrong with you. Like, you would have to know exactly
Yeah.
what's wrong with you for that machine to work. And it's like, well, what if, yeah.
Yeah, you have to be
Yeah,
diagnosed, sure.
it's a weird. Well, I
Yeah.
almost kind of like that. It like kind of sucks because it's almost like because they make a big point. They're like, oh, only like 12 of these were even made. It's like the most advanced thing, but it's still like a shitty capitalist like piece of garbage where it's like, oh, they didn't even like build one to do males or females, you know. So it's like,
Yeah.
I kind of like that. Yeah.
So then it's like she gets in, it's like coming out of her, and then also she has like pain pills, but then they give her anesthesia, and I'm like, I was worried she was gonna OD, which I knew wasn't gonna happen, but I was like, why'd you take so much drugs?
What an ignominious end.
Yeah. And then she's like, oh, it hurts, and it's like, so this machine makes you feel.
Didn't work. Yeah, it's like this anesthetic. It's anti-anesthetic.
Why is the surgery in the future worse than surgery?
I think it's more like it's like just not enough time. But yeah, it's a good scene.
And so it's like searching, and she's like, "Hurry up!" And you see the thing kind of grow in her belly, which makes no scientific sense, but I do like anytime they do it. And
yeah,
it
looks insane.
And then it like they finally get it out, and like one of the coolest scenes because it's hanging. And it's like in a embryonic sac, and then it just explodes all over her. It's such a
know.
And it gets like
all over like the wound,
and she's kind of like wiping it off. It's like, that's not gonna work, girl.
Yeah, you're pushing it further into yourself, man.
It's such a cool point.
Good.
And then like, but then it leads to like, so then it's like hanging, and it also looks like a pseudo face hugger, but like a little bit more advanced. And so she's trying to like get out of there so it could kill her. Like, there's an unknown contaminant in here. We're gonna kill it. And so she's trying to rush out, but again, this thing like can tell there's an unknown contaminant. They need to kill it, but it never thought like we might have to save the person that's in there.
Yeah, it's very faulty.
Yeah, and then despite being in so much pain that she was literally dripping in sweat, Shaw just kind of gets up and goes to the other room, and then falls down.
Yeah.
And then, like, everyone kind of turns around like, oh, Shaw. None of them are like, oh my god, you have like a huge bloody scar in the middle of your stomach. What the fuck is going on?
Idris Elba's just singing Christmas carols. He's like, join in.
And again,
get your ass over here.
It implied that David knew what was inside of her, at least knew that there was something inside of her worth saving. But he's like, he just looks at her and he's like, get your suit on, stupid. You're late.
Yeah.
And that's when we find out.
We're singing what?
That's when we find out Weyland-Yutani is alive. And I realized something. I thought originally that it was just a turn of phrase. Because she says at the beginning. No, she says when she sees him, you're alive, quote, question mark. And he tells her, oh, I had a few days of life left in me. And I thought he was just being like sarcastic. But now that I watched it again, maybe he was being literal and he's like, oh, he was on the verge of death. And instead of dying, he had them freeze him.
Right.
That's why he's been there. But again, they added that. But again, like the reveal that he's on the ship doesn't really change anything for any of the characters whatsoever.
Right.
The only thing is it gives Charlize Theron more motivation. But it's because then at one point she's like, is there anything else you want, Dad? And it's like, I mean, I kind of
pops.
Who cares?
Yeah.
I'm not worried about the succession of Weyland-Yutani right now.
Because they even because even in his hologram, like, which again I know it's supposed to be a twist that she's the daughter. He's like, David's my true child, but he's a robot, so he can't learn more. Is like, but I don't have any other children. It's like, why are you telling the scientists
No.
this?
He doesn't say that. He says, David gave me the one thing I'd never had, a son. And then it cuts to Charlize Theron with her short hair. And she's like, oh.
She has like the catcher's mitt in baseball. She's just sad.
And she's got the smoke coming out of her ears and there's like a train whistle. So then they're like, okay, let's let everyone go. And Charlize Theron's like, I'm not going to go. And they're like, okay, why aren't you here again? So they're like, okay, we're going to go ask the engineer if he can give us more life. And so they're like, okay. And then Shaw like goes up to Idris Elba and she's like, hey, that thing can't leave. And then Idris Elba's like, buddy, this isn't even their home planet. This is like a military operation that they had. And like, okay,
Yeah.
couple of things. How does he know that? Why did they send them millions of years ago to a military operation? And like, what was
Yeah.
their plan? Because then it's kind of like later we'll find out what they want to do with the humans now. But was that? I guess I have to spoil it. So spoiler is we find out that they want to kill the humans for some reason.
Yeah, they created life,
Mhm.
but at some point they decide to kill us all, and the whole thing is that Shaw is like, why? Like, why did they do the first
Why
thing?
do they
Why
hate
did
us
the
so
second?
much? Yeah.
And none of that ever
Right.
gets answered or followed up on.
And also, like, how does Shaw know that?
Yeah.
Like, Shaw just kind of guesses.
Yeah,
that they're
how
trying
did
to
they
kill us.
suppose that? Yeah.
Yeah. So then they all go
Mhm.
down to the little planet, and they're like, "Hey, what's up, dude? Time to wake up." And he wakes up, and then I don't know if this isn't. Oh, no. So in the original movie script of this movie, what happened was that hologram was there, and then you find out that all of the creatures were attacked by an alien, and that last pilot had put a face hugger on him, and so he has an alien inside of him. That's why he froze himself to give himself a couple more days of life, which would have tied back
Pa-
into Wayland.
Parallels.
And then also that it
Yeah.
would explain why he would be so mad at being woken up by a bunch of morons.
Instead, he's just a big jerk.
So that but that's not explained.
Yeah.
So then he wakes up and like he just kind of looks at him, and then David talks to him, and he clearly understands David because he gives him that like, "How do you know my language?" look. And again, there's a deleted scene. You were talking about deleted scenes earlier, where we see what the alien like. They have more of a conversation, and there's more talked about. So I'll talk about two different versions of that deleted scene. In the one that they actually filmed, he's like, it's kind of interesting because you find out that the way like David is translating for Wayland Bhutan or for Wayland, but he keeps like kind of doing it a little bit off. Like Wayland Yutani in the movie, he goes, "Hey, can I have life? Tell him I want more life." And then the way that David translates it is he says, "This man thinks he deserves more life." And then the
Yeah.
alien goes, "Oh, well, why? Why does he think he deserves more life? Like, what has he done?" And then David's like, he wants to know why. Like, he doesn't like fully explain everything, but he's kind of doing it.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
in the other
That's
one,
cool, actually. They should have left that in.
I know it's such a good like idea.
Yeah.
And then in the other one, I wanna see if Josh also thinks we should have kept this one in there.
Maybe.
The alien says like, "Oh, the reason we don't like you is because 2,000 years ago we sent one of our babies to your house, to your planet, and then you guys crucified him." And he looks at the camera and he goes, like this.
Jesus Christ.
And they did not film the alien on
They
the
did not-
crucifix,
they did
but
not.
they should have.
He and also like
That'd be
he's
cool.
just like standing up because he's like 10 feet tall. He's not even on the.
It's
Yeah.
like
His like feet touch the ground.
it's like I understand why the Romans
Much
did
like
this.
it.
Actually,
And
this
It's also like Ridley
Yeah.
Scott. Do you
Dumb.
understand why people are religious? Like people like Jesus not because not because of the God part,
It's a
but
super
because of the
alien.
human part.
But that
So making him a super
Right,
alien
right.
makes no sense.
But that
Like,
does,
how did
like-
he get captured? Why
that
did he
does
let them put
tie
him on
in.
trial?
You know what I mean? Because like first they
Yeah.
create life, and this takes place on Christmas Day, Jesus' birthday, because it's like
Oh my god.
you know. So it's all. I again, this does feel like 6 scripts mashed together with no real coherence.
Yeah.
So
So,
yeah.
so then also there's like one of my favorite scenes is when the engineer gets up, Wayland Yutani like falls backwards, and then they catch him, and then he's like, I'm all right, and I'm like, what is this vaudeville?
Yeah.
It's also you know it's funny in this scene. There's like another girl scientist who doesn't say or do much, who just kind of gets slapped aside in this scene by the engineer and never see her again. It's like I
Yeah,
guess the
she's
slap
dead.
killed her. You know.
Well, then
Right.
something
right.
happens to that ship right after that.
That's true. That's true.
And also we're full of spoilers now, by the way. And so then the engineer grabs his head or David's head and rips
head.
it off, and then beats Wayland Yutani with him. And I'm like, finally, some coded symbolism, guys.
Yeah.
And it's David should have been doing the C3PO quips from episode 2 where he's like, I'm beside myself.
Yeah.
That was a missed opportunity.
Turn around, you hairy ape! That's what he would have been saying. And then so he beats them to death, and then he throws David's head, and they land right next to each other, and then David's like, "Rest easy, Dad." And it's like, okay, guys, he got it. So then she like runs away, and everyone runs away, and then they're like, "We gotta get out of here." And then the engineer's like, "Time for me to go," and he's like, "Leave." Which again, it's like, why didn't you just do that?
The engineer, he gets into the chair,
Yeah.
and he's in basically the pilot's chair from Alien.
Yeah.
That's essentially, so it's
So
like,
then
this
Idris
is a
Elba's
prequel.
like, we gotta stop this guy. So we're gonna crash our ship into him. And then, like, okay. So they're like, we gotta stop this guy. Let's crash our ship into him. So he takes off. Then he shoots another ship. It's like a carrier ship, I guess, out of the plane.
Yeah.
Which then, like, whoever designed it was Wayland, because it crashes immediately, which is not how rowboats should work. You'd think that they would have figured that out.
Yeah.
And then, like, Charlize Theron's like, I gotta get out of here. So she's getting all dressed, and she gets in another smaller escape pod that they have. There's not a Titanic, guys. There's enough room for everyone. So they have, like, another one, and it shoots out. And then the ship crashes into the alien ship so that it doesn't take off. And the whole time I was thinking, you had essentially, like, 8 missiles that are gigantic, and instead of shooting them at that ship, you crashed into it. Like, shoot the life things at that ship until it explodes.
Right.
What are you doing?
Right.
I would have gotten on top and just shot stuff out of it until it crashed. What the hell are you guys?
It was a very like, how do we give Idris Elba a dramatic death?
And then Idris Elba's literally like, "Whoa!"
The only competent man in the movie.
He is not competent whatsoever. He crashes the ship like 3 times.
Hey, he figured out the entire plot despite not knowing anything else.
There's another scene where like he's like doing nothing. And Charlize Theron comes in and she's like, "Hey, what's going on?" And he's like, "I don't know, you want to have sex?" And she's like, "No, gross." And he's like, "Okay." And she's like, "All right, fine, let's have sex." Sure?
Yeah, well, because he's like, "Hey, are you a robot or are you just like a bitch?" She's like, "Fine, I guess we're having sex." He's like, "Oh, I negged her successfully."
In the future, negging works. And then he like has a harmonica and he's like, "If you can't be with the ones you love, then love the ones you're with." And I'm like, who is David Lindelof? Does he not know what likable people are? Like, what's going on in this movie?
I know.
Has he never met anyone who's cool, or what the fuck?
He's like, Idris Elba's like the video game protagonist, but he's choosing all the different options in every scene. So it's like, I don't understand his personality. He's just...
I know.
And then
he's mixed.
He's
a mixed personality.
There's a hilarious part where she tells Idris Elba, Shaw, she goes, "I'm so sorry. This is all my fault." And it's like, yeah, I mean... Yeah, like, you brought us out here. You didn't know what the hell you were doing. You haven't followed any protocol.
Yeah.
This is
to be fair,
fault.
It was more David's fault. Yeah, well, but no one knew that until the end.
So then, like, she gets out and they like crash the ship. And it's also like, where does she go? Because she's trying to get to the escape pod. So she gets there, and then Charlize Theron also gets out, and then Charlize Theron gets run over by the ship.
This ship is like a circular kind of disc running in the...
Which they know. Yeah, it's Looney Tunes style logic.
It's a little much, and I don't hate it because the idea is like they're panicking, but they do give them way too much time. Like, it's not close enough that they couldn't have like just...
Yeah, they can look. That's the problem.
But the scene as it is, it doesn't work, but the intention's fine. Whatever.
And it does look cool again. So then she gets knocked out, and then she wakes up, and they're like, 2 minutes of oxygen left in your helmet. And so she's like, let me get up. And so then she gets to the ship, and then like David's like, "Hey, Shaw, I guess I like humans now. The big monster alien's coming to kill you." And she's like, "Why?" And he's like, "I don't know." So then he like shows up at the ship, and he's trying to get in, and then she sees that the little alien that she has is now gigantic. It looks like an octopus. And so then she's like fighting with him, and then she opens the door, and then it gets him, and then it also like throats him, and then
and it's like a giant. It's funny because it's first the miniature facehugger, and this is the super giant facehugger.
Well, and so another thing is idea. Like she immediately like puts her helmet back on and runs out. But it's like, shouldn't she have 2 minutes left? Because she didn't
Right,
refill
right.
it up. She like just went there,
Yes.
got attacked, and left.
You know, the movie's ending. They're like, let's just get to
And so
this.
then
Yeah.
she goes and talks to David, and she's like, "Hey, David, what's up?" And he's like, "Oh, I can show you where they came from." And she's like, "Well, why didn't you tell me that? Why
Yeah,
wouldn't
the
you
whole
tell me
time.
that? Because like, wouldn't you want to go to that place? Even David, like, shouldn't he have been like, oh no, guys, there's actually a map to another place. We should go there instead of putting all our eggs in
But,
one
and
basket."
this is also because she's like,
Right.
why would I trust you, David? I realize now you caused like most of this. But he's like, come on. And that's what makes the next movie make no sense. But we'll get there,
Yeah.
next
Yeah,
week.
yeah.
So then there's an after the credits scene, and then like an alien bursts out of the engineer, and it looks nothing like any of the aliens, and it has two faces, and then it cuts to credits. The
Right,
camera
it
comes
is.
up, and you're like,
Yeah.
It's kind of like a fetus, but yeah, it has the alien head, and then the mouth comes out kind of a
so
little bit.
talking about
Yeah.
this
That's
movie,
fine.
I think the reason that I don't hate it as much as other people is because the way that Ridley Scott and Walter Hill always described the original Alien was that it was a slasher in space. Like the slasher just happened to be an alien. It
Right.
follows the same rules. And I think to me, like watching this movie, I realized that this is a Meet the Devil movie in space. Where it's like most of these movies, they start off and they think they're going to meet God and they end up meeting the devil. There's always one
Yeah.
believer. The believer is usually the one who lives. The other ones are the ones who like get punished by God or the devil. The person they meet, like they even have like essentially a seance where they wake him up and he attacks them. Like it
Right,
just
right.
follows all those tropes. So I'm able to kind of forgive more of it. I do also wish that I didn't have to forgive as much of this movie.
I know. And it gets away with so much too because it just
It looks
like
good.
honestly I've watched this movie so many times just because it looks so good
Yeah,
and I love
I
watching
get
the
it.
special effects and I love the sounds and I love like all the blood and stuff, but there's like a lot of times where I've watched it where like I think that I've like always missed a plot point every time
Yeah.
that I've seen
Yeah.
it. And like finally watching it this time and like really paying attention to everything, I was like, I haven't missed one
Yeah,
goddamn
there's
thing.
Yeah.
just stuff
Like
just
so
does
long.
really happen,
And
and
I
David
think
just does
Yeah.
things. It's not anything,
Mhm.
I think one of the interesting things is kind of like, yeah, like William was saying, you watch his movies so many times and you're like, you love them, you know? But then when we do them
Yeah.
for the podcast and you're watching them with a more critical eye, you're kind of like, okay, but why did they do that? And what does this do? And like it's
Right,
just
right.
interesting to see this movie. And it's not that like, I mean, it's not that I never noticed the plot holes. It's that when you're trying to talk about like how it all fits together, it's very frustrating when like there's just parts that don't matter whatsoever. Like
Right, right.
she's
Yeah.
like, there's literally the scene, like I said, she gets that thing ripped out of her, and it only comes back at the end. But that scene is so clearly like feels tacked on that it's
Mhm.
like it feels like, oh, we had to explain the aliens and we hadn't done that, so let's get them infected or some shit.
Right.
And it's like, and I kind of still like it, but I don't know. What do you guys think?
It is because there's a lot, like, you know how like we kind of forgot to describe Charlize Theron until the very end, because it's kind of like, yeah, she doesn't
Yeah.
do anything. She gets
She's just
flattened.
working.
It's never like a point where if she wasn't in the movie things would be different, and that's kind of the problem. Is
Right.
there's a lot of stuff in this
Completely
movie where
inconsequential.
we also totally skipped. Probably the worst action scene of the movie where one of the guys comes back as a zombie,
Oh, and he's a frog.
Oh,
and he's like,
yeah.
"Rah!" and he's like hitting people, and they get him, and I'm just like,
Mhm.
let's
The
get
Mohawk guy.
to the end of this.
Right. It's like they just had to have an exciting scene, so they were just like,
It-
what can we do?
It was
How
such
can
a
we get
weird,
something?
like, bad zombie scene in a. Whereas most of the other action, like alien stuff, is really good in this movie. So I don't know. It's just
Right.
there's a lot of redundancy and unnecessary stuff here. It's tricky.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But it's all still just so watchable.
Oh, yeah,
like
it's
what it
cool, yeah.
It's just like, yeah, it's such a mixed bag, but like, I think the three of us kind of agree that it's a mixed bag that errs towards good. And when it hits, it hits.
Yeah.
And when it doesn't, it's kind of like, well, that's dumb. But it's not like movie breaking necessarily.
Yeah, it's not
It's like,
terrible,
okay.
but
Yeah.
So now I'm gonna do my much aligned theory, which will work a little bit more with Alien Covenant, but I want to throw it out there so you guys start thinking about it. And I've kind of come up with this theory based on stuff that I've read, mostly from articles about Ridley Scott. And he talks a lot about how he doesn't like the queen alien. And it made me
Huh.
realize that Ridley Scott does not like Aliens, the movie.
Oh yeah,
And
no,
this
yeah,
movie is retconning Aliens, and it happens again in Alien Covenant. But if you look at this movie as a sequel to Alien Part 1 and you take everything out, or a prequel, it works a lot better. The problem is that everything that's established in Aliens about the natural cycle of these creatures doesn't
Yeah.
work if the creatures are genetically engineered just to kill. Because
I
a
know.
natural
For real.
cycle implies that it lives, it eats, it breeds. But this way,
Hmm.
it's just like, oh no, it's just here to kill. And
it's
it's like,
just a like
and
a
even
bioweapon.
like,
Yeah. Makes them way less complex.
and you have to understand two things about Ridley Scott. A, he's kind of a dick.
No, he's the
Yeah.
ultimate hater.
And
Yeah,
B, he is like he loves his friend. He turned away from his franchises for a long time, and he kind of felt burnt, like that they didn't like beg him to come back. And so even up until right now, when Aliens Romulus has come out, he did like a huge presser where he was talking about how he was annoyed that they didn't come to him to when they were thinking about making Aliens. They went straight to James Cameron, which
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense because James Cameron pitched them a sequel to Aliens. They weren't looking to make one. And B, if Ridley Scott had pitched a sequel to Aliens, I'm pretty sure Fox would have said yes. But
right.
like,
Yeah.
it's also like, Ridley, it's been 40 years. Like, maybe it's time to.
Yeah.
But that's what I was saying. Like the David being so malevolent for no reason, it feels like a direct to be like, no, all technology and
Exactly.
aliens are bad. Like you
Mhm.
can't.
Right.
Like Bishop is like, that's not a real idea because everything's trying to kill you in this
And
universe.
And
yeah.
even like the character of Shaw kind of feels like a warped version of Ripley from Aliens, where she can't have kids, but she has no connection to anyone really.
Yeah.
Where Alien is
Yeah.
all about her creating that connection. And so, and once it gets to Alien Covenant, it gets like obscene how much he fucking hates the second movie. But it's also like,
Yeah.
it makes it for an interesting watch. Of like, okay, but do you know how cool that Queen Alien is? Like,
Yeah, well,
Right,
and
right.
I don't mind the idea of like, oh, these are different attempts at the xenomorph,
Mhm.
you know, and like the Queen was the one that really took off, so I don't hate it, whatever. But
I mean, I don't
Yeah.
hate
I know
it,
Ridley
but
Scott does. I
and
mean,
it's kind
It's
of
so
like,
funny.
and yeah, go ahead, Wade.
Oh, it's just I never thought about that. That's just hilarious.
And
Like,
it's even funnier because if you think about it, like every kind of horror movie that gets a sequel, there's always like, oh, how are they going to make it different and how are they going to up the stakes, you know? And the one
Mhm.
who's the best at doing that is James Cameron. Like
Right,
introducing the
right.
T-1000 is like, it's almost as inventive as introducing the idea of the Terminator.
right,
And the
Right,
Queen
right.
Alien, again, like the greatest thing about the Queen Alien and introducing all that is that it doesn't take away anything from the original Alien. It just builds upon the mythos. And even like
Yeah.
Avatar Way of Water, like those water guys, I mean, Avatar Way of Water is better than the first one. So it's like you guys got this like genius who knows how to make a movie up to stakes without
Mhm.
like ruining, like you look at Terminator, any of the other ones, and that's how to add like a Terminator that's supposed to be worse, but just kind of sucks.
Yeah.
And like, but and I could see like you have two auteurs kind of going at it, like
I know.
they're both
It's
trying
like,
to
I
prove
can't
like, no, I'm
do it.
better, you know.
right.
Like
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
about George Lucas being like, no, we got to beat Titanic, you know. It's like,
Right.
but I think that's interesting. And as we go into Alien Covenant, we'll look at it even more because that
As we
one
descend into the
goes.
Yeah.
coven. of
And I want you
Alien
to think
Covenant.
about that when you're watching it. Is like if any of our fans want to watch Alien Covenant, well, before we discuss it, think about like especially the creation of some of the staples and how it doesn't make sense if there's a queen. But yeah, interesting stuff,
I know.
interesting convo. We appreciate that you guys are really digging this series. Hopefully it continues. I don't know. We've only done
Yeah.
two. But check it out. We'll see you guys next week as we finish a Xenomonth when we talk about
Xenomonth.
the best film in the franchise, Alien Covenant,
Yeah.
No one believes that, including Ridley Scott,
the Prometheus franchise.
including both Davids. neither believes that.
Bye, guys.